they believe there is discrimination against white people in America.
I'm very confused by it.
I'm not asking you.
That's right. A public university in Florida now offering a white racism course for the upcoming spring semester.
What makes those voters so ignorant? Well, for starters, they are whiter.
Being white and the privilege that comes from that is all they have to get ahead, because they're losers, made winners by privilege. Maybe that's why they identify with losers so much.
Alleged kidnapping and torture streamed live on Facebook. A white teenager with special needs tied up and beaten as a group of young African Americans shouting anti-white slurs and calling out Donald Trump.
It was an 18-year-old victim who was tied and gagged. The suspects put a knife to his throat at different points in this video. They make him drink from the toilet. They shout expletives against white people and against the president-elect. This torture goes on for more than 30 minutes.
Donald Trump, white people, what?
No.
I can't say that it's a hate crime.
We don't know if it's a hate crime.
Okay.
But more importantly, even if we have people of color in our lives, that would be like a straight man saying that he can't be sexist because he has a wife. Like, who would make that argument, right? Just because you have people who are close to you in a marginalized group doesn't mean that you don't carry any prejudice in the larger society.
But what's the thing that's most common? And the sad thing is, it's the whiteness. That's what's most common, not the workingness.
When you're white, you don't know what it's like to be living in a ghetto. You don't know what it's like to be poor.
Well, a bar in Portland, Oregon offered a reparations happy hour earlier this week in which white people were not invited to attend, but were invited to pay for. About 100 people did pay their racial indulgences. Enjoy yoga? Please stop. You're promoting white supremacy. Srina Gandhi, a professor of religious studies at Michigan State, argued in a recent piece that, quote, the explosion of yoga studios, yoga video, apps, yoga pants, and other yoga swag over the past 2 decades is evidence, you guessed it, of systemic racism. See that picture? It's a baby. Cute, isn't it? Well, we blurred the face to protect his identity because we've got bad news. You're looking at a bigot. According to a new pair of scientific papers, your baby is one too. Those studies say all babies are racist, even when they're just 6 months old. For real, it says that. Can my children be friends with white people? He really asked it, and he wasn't optimistic. Quote, I will teach my boys the lesson generations old, he wrote. I will teach them to be cautious. I will teach them suspicion. I will teach them distrust. I will teach my boys to have profound doubts that friendship with white people is possible.
I think at some point you tell your daughters, look, it's fine to be friendly with them, but these are not your friends.
The sentiment, it's okay to be white, is now a hate crime. Okay, so what's the correct position? That it's not okay to be white?
Students found flyers taped up at a high school that say it's okay to be white. And now there are some racist online threats connected to them.
Just evil motivation, and just go back into your hole.
The high school's principal says this was posted to 10 exterior doors to the school and that this appears to be a concentrated effort to foment racial and political tension.
The city of Hilliard released a statement about the flyers saying racism and hateful messages of any kind will not be tolerated in our community.
Some students turned to social media, tweeting about not being okay with the posts.
In certain situations, I think it's best to keep things like that to yourself and off campus.
Someone who has not had your lived experience can write about it, get accolades, and then on top of that, get a prize for that. And I think that's why there was the outrage. And in my view, an appropriation prize, what does that mean? Let's have a colonization prize, some would argue, in terms of what has been done to largely marginalized communities.
Well, in a story over the weekend, the Times explained that New Hampshire is, quote, nearly all white, 94%, and this has caused, quote, an array of problems. The paper doesn't prove that this is true. In fact, there's zero evidence that the demographics of the state hurt the people who live there. New Hampshire's actual problems, and it has some, have nothing to do with race at all. Instead, though, the Times argues that New Hampshire's whiteness is inherently offensive to others, especially immigrants. The paper interviewed a woman from Columbia who complained that she cannot find enough Spanish speakers in New Hampshire, and that is unacceptable. According to the New York Times, Americans have an obligation to change their culture to suit foreigners and not the other way around. Well, Georgetown sociology professor Michael Eric Dyson has a solution to white privilege. He says white Americans ought to create individual reparations accounts Yesterday, the Times announced it was hiring a woman called Sarah Jeong to write about technology for the paper. Judging by what she wrote on Twitter, Sarah Jeong is an angry bigot, and not in a subtle way. Oh man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men. Dumbass effing white people marking up the internet with their opinions like dogs peeing on fire hydrants. Another, quote, hashtag cancel white people. Later she said that white people smell like dogs. Here's another one, quote, white people have stopped breeding. You'll all go extinct soon. That was my plan all along. For a period of time, she responded to that harassment by imitating the rhetoric of her harassers. In other words, it's not her fault. White racism caused Sarah Jeong's racism against white people. She's the victim here, Harvard graduate, oppressed person that she is.
Well, today, Kanye West has a lot of people wondering if he cares about black people. Rapper Kanye West tweeting today, you don't have to agree with Trump, but the mob can't make me not love him. We are both dragon energy. He is my brother. I love everyone. I don't agree with everything anyone does. That's what makes us individuals, and we have the right to independent thought.
And he ought to be ashamed of himself. You know, look at my black, my African-American friend. That's what he's doing. And it's embarrassing. We have an urgency today to educate and teach all young people that what he is saying is wrong. I don't care how popular he is. I don't care how many people love his music. There needs to be an outcry, because that's the same thing as a Holocaust denier. Kanye doesn't read anything, and he needs to go back to school. Somebody needs to take him the autobiography of Malcolm X this morning, sit him down somewhere and make him read it.
Well, there are some memes now that say Kanye West doesn't care about black people with the picture of Bush. He's in the sunken place. He's in the sunken place. I'm sorry.
These Americans enjoy a privilege. They can avoid the unpalatable. They live comfortable lives in nice areas because they're white.
Just accept the premise that you were going to be wrong.
How many things do white people have? How many? All of the things.
That's where the cash is, right? That's where the money is.
Well, the cash is in all the white people's wallets, so...
Safety Pin Box's message to guilty whites. If you want to do something, put money in a black woman's pocket. Some tasks are simple, like give black people higher tips. Others are harder.
This month at Safety Pin Box, we are focused on learning about and practicing radical compassion, that's nice, as a part of combating white supremacy. You do 3 things every week. One is directed towards this, in this case, black elderly. One is directed towards the over-incarcerated, and this one's media. This week, I take a look at the media I consume on a regular basis and evaluate it for bias and worthiness.
So this is not to buy you a new car.
Well, I mean, I might get a new car. I don't know. I'm not willing to say on the air that I'm not going to get a new car. I might get a new car.
Tonight, the contentious new code telling nurses to say sorry for being white.
According to how the code is written, the white nurse would come in and say, before I deal with you, I have to acknowledge to you that I have certain privileges that you don't have. The code says that I must tell you that they come about because of my whiteness.
What I think when I see the word white, first word that comes to mind would be privilege, arrogance, naive. I want to say helpful, but only helpful so long as it benefits them.
Cultural appropriation is theft.
Theft.
Theft. Don't be surprised when people from diverse communities step up to you and say, hey, what was that about?
Because if you haven't done your homework, or if you haven't given that platform you have to somebody who might be more informed and can speak from their own experience, you're going to hear about it.
That's what it's really about. Have you been given permission to use these things or not?
So what's wrong with white people posting these GIFs and using these emojis? Well, black people are not here for other people's entertainment. We're not symbols of excessive emotion, and we aren't here to make you look more sassy, more sexy, or more street.
Hey, white people! Sometimes white people are right, but is racism still a thing? Spoiler alert! Oh! Ooh, what's that smell? That would be racism!
Us white people, we have to erase it, and the first step is to own up and face it.
Our research found that white kids had a fairly high rate of what researchers call white bias.
But I think that, you know, it's a clear example of, while she's never chosen to talk about race, he has clearly internalized some messages that he's gotten through society that indicate that darker skinned children are perhaps not as smart or not as honorable, you know, things like that, those insidious messages that are woven into the fabric of this country. That this mother is a good mother and that she, you know, considers people to all be equal. She's an educator and she believes that, but her child is internalizing messages that she has to learn how to get a handle on and control.
In my experience, I meet a lot of really well-intentioned white people who care about racial equality and care about social justice. But when they try to engage in conversations about race, they either don't know how to do it effectively, or when they do, they operate as more of an abuser than as an ally. White people, I'm going to make a demand of you right now. Stop hurting me.
The thing that triggered people was the title of the class, White Racism. Look, if you get triggered by that, then there is some sort of guilt, either subconsciously or very consciously, that you need to deal with, right?
For you to deny that is absurd and is defensive in a way that makes you think, what are you trying to hide?
No Whites Allowed. Now, that's the title of a new publication being produced by and for UTSA students.
Yale University students launching an online petition calling on the English department to abolish a required course on classic English literature that includes major poets such as Shakespeare, Chaucer, and T.S. Eliot. They claim that studying white male writers is, quote, a hostile environment.
I have been to several meetings to speak. I've been told several times that I'm not allowed to speak because I'm white. Because I choose not to focus on race, I've actually been labeled a racist and a white supremacist. I've been told several times that I'm not allowed to speak because I'm white. I feel like people are becoming more violent. The campus is becoming more of an unsafe place.
They believe there is discrimination against white people in America.
I'm very confused by it.
I'm not asking you.